What's up, YouTube? This is a special Cider Guys episode where we're going to showcase an interview that we did with Amy from Black Twig. We went down there and met with her, tasted some food. We had a really good time. Now, here are some pictures of the place. And coming up here in just a second, you're going to see their choach keg. Now, at the end of the video, or at the end of the interview, rather, you're going to see what that is just all about. And next up here is a picture of the entire choach setup. Again, you'll see that here in just a little bit. Next couple pictures are just a couple pictures of their menu. And if you'll notice, there are a lot of cider choices on this menu. So stay tuned. In the next episode, we'll go over the menu and all the foods that we tried while we were at Black Twig. Stay tuned. All right, YouTube, so here we are at Black Twig Ciderhouse. We're here with Amy, their general manager. She has graciously decided to let us interview her for just a little bit about, Black Twig and what they offer, what they do here. And I'm going to turn it over to her real quick and just say, Amy, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for coming out.
Absolutely. And just tell us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
I've been in the industry for about 12 years. And I've done a little bit of everything, primarily bartending. I've waited tables, I've done some management. Started out with a focus on beer, I moved to a focus on wine, and now I focus on cider. So there's a huge role for translation between these three categories as we get people more and more into cider and more people into cider. So it's certainly been advantageous for me to have a background in both beer and wine. I got into cider because my boss told me he was closing the wine bar that I was working at, and we are now going to be a cider bar. So It's been a quick learning curve, but it's been awesome. It's been really fun to be able to get into such a growing and excited market. Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Mark for the rest of the interview because there is a lot of food in front of us that we're going to try. We've got pairings of each cider to go with it. Amy has hooked us up with, and we're going to talk about those as we go through, and I'll have some pictures up as we do that of just the different plates and sitting around, and we'll highlight them as we go. But this is where Mark comes in because I am hungry and I'm going to eat. So, Mark, all you, buddy.
All right, so we have a few questions we put together before we got here. So, you spoke to us a little bit about how Black Twig came about, but can you, since we're back on camera now, can you talk about how Black Twig got started?
So we used to be Six Plates Wine Bar, and we have been Black Twig Ciderhouse for about 2 years now. Actually, 2 years today, I believe. Basically, my boss had been trying to do something with cider for 4 years, 5 years, and he had not found quite the right approach, not quite the right location, not quite the right whatever it was. And 2 years ago, he said, you know, wine is so played out. We're gonna be a cider bar now.
Yeah.
And so my first question, of course, is what is a cider bar? And I think we've all spent the past 2 years learning what that is. But yeah, we closed down the wine bar and we turned it over in 2 weeks. It's a long 2 weeks. We come from a wine background, and as a wine bar, we had slightly esoteric taste in wine, so we did a lot of translation to begin with. A lot of, thank you, finding the right wine for the right palate. And so taking that skill and moving it into cider was easy and obvious. It just required a little bit more familiarity with cider. And so we do a lot of that translation of, okay, you tell me what you drink, and I'll tell you what cider you should drink. You drink beer, you drink wine, you drink cocktails, anything you drink. If you drink juice, I can find you a cider. Tell me what book you're reading.
What is your background in cider? How did you get involved?
My background in cider is my boss sat me down and said, I'm closing that wine bar that you're running. And I said, that's weird. Sounds like I'm out of a job. Why are you so excited? And he said, we're going to be a cider bar now. It's cool. We're going to CiderCon next month, and so my background in cider started in Portland 2 years ago with CiderCon. We had poured a few ciders at the wine bar, some French stuff, some Spanish stuff, and occasionally like Farnham Hill from New Hampshire, Castle Hill from Virginia. But my background in cider is about as old as this restaurant.
Quick learner.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of your favorites. What do you, when you pick your favorite cider, what are you looking for? What do you think are the best characteristics?
Occasion. What am I eating? What am I doing? There's a cider for every palate, and there's a cider for every occasion. I don't know that I could say that there are inherently superior qualities. That's just a hedonistic evaluation. I love cider. I love drinking apples. My preferences err towards more orchard-based ciders because I think that's cooler and more interesting. There's just more going into it. But I also love ciders that are, made from sort of your grocery store apples that are infused with all different interesting, whether it's like an herbaceous infusion with rosemary, whether it's tropical fruit and spicy pepper. That combination tends to do really well together. I like all of it. It just depends what I'm doing. There's a time, there's a place, and there's a palate.
Can you talk about how you pick the ciders that you have here? How they were chosen?
I have a magic 8-ball. I try to maintain a strong selection of local offerings. I try to run the gamut. I don't know how much you guys know about the history of cider, but there are considered to be 4 major cultural cider cultures with cider traditions: the British, the French, the Spanish, and the Americans. Cider was the most consumed beverage in the United States before Prohibition, and then those heathens burned down all of our good trees. And so it's been sort of a slow climb towards propagating the good cider apples. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Johnny Appleseed and all of it. Great guy. Really too bad they lit all his trees on fire.
Yeah.
Really a shame. But yeah, so I try to represent all of the big cider cultures all of the time on the menu. We have 12 ciders by the glass every night, which is conveniently divisible by 4. 4 being the magic number because that is how many ciders we offer on our flights. So there are 3 potential flights that you could create on a given evening. And then we have, I haven't counted recently. I think it looks more like 30 than 20. I've been saying 15 to 20 for a long time, but I would say it looks more like 30 ciders in small format.
Real good selection.
Which doesn't even get you into our large format. 750 milliliter bottles. We have, I think we had 90 when we counted at Choach Fest.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the future of ciders. Like, where do you see ciders going, and how are you trying to get the word of ciders out to everybody?
I think the trajectory of cider will resemble that of craft beer, where craft beer is almost redundant as a term. 30 years ago, if you said beer, you were talking about some national pale lager.
Right.
And now if you say beer, most people are going to start thinking, if not something like a Sierra Nevada, something local.
Yeah.
And so I think that cider will similarly go from the wine cooler reputation that it may be trying to actively shed right now, to something that's more familiar, more understood, that's locally produced. I think. How much time you got? I think I'm gonna try and make this real brief. But I think that with the rise of globalization over the past 100 years, it was so cool that you could get anything, from anywhere at any time. And then, yeah, that's cool, but it really messes up economies. And so there's been this turn back towards local and turn back towards sustainable, and what makes sense to be growing here, and how do we pay homage to the place where we live, and support it and make the most of it. So I think that cider will always benefit from that global perspective. But if you look at the history in Spain, if you look at the history in France, if you look at the history in the UK, who did not have that small little disruption that we had in the 20s, they're drinking cider that they're making on the farm because it's refreshing, and because they have the apples already. So I think cider will benefit from local. I think people are thinking more about what they're eating and what they're drinking, being more attentive to quality, in all qualities. So I think that the future of cider is less about growing exponentially and more about sort of growing naturally. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So how does cider break into that beer market?
Translation. It's all about translation. It's about showing people that it's familiar. So there's a lot that plays into that. I mean, how do you get people to buy cider? How do you make it familiar? Obviously, if you walk into a cider bar and you have cider nerds whose brains you can pick, that makes it really easy. Yeah. But if you're going down to Sam's Quick Shop and you're seeing a great selection of cider, they have, as far as I know, the best retail selection of cider, at least in the area, if not in the state. What are you looking for? If you're a beer person, you're going to be looking for those cans, probably 12 or 16 ounce cans. So graphics, design, marketing all plays into it. If you're a wine person, you're probably going to be looking more for a 750 milliliter bottle. It's a great question. I actually was on a panel at CiderCon answering this very question with Sam from Ancho and a couple guys who run bottle shops in Baltimore. And so it sort of depends on who you're asking. If you're asking the cider novice to get into cider, I think design and marketing has a lot to do with it, and ideally knowledgeability of staff. It's about translation. I think it would be really awesome to see more cider packaging that had a little bit of an informational, if you like this beverage, you'll like this cider. But I think it's translation.
Yeah. All right, Amy, we just want to say thank you for joining us today.
Mark, it's been such a pleasure. This has been so much fun.
Yes, it has been. Thanks for all the information you've shared.
Thanks for coming in and eating some food and drinking some cider.
And so we have a little gift for you. We got you a Cider Guys
I love it. Fantastic.
What you wish.
We will display it prominently behind the bar.
All right, thank you.
We look forward to seeing you guys back at Black Twig Ciderhouse in the future.
Yes,
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, YouTube, we got a special little thing we're going to show you here. We're going to choke. You know, this is the first time that I've done it, and I think it's the first time Mark's done it, but it is definitely not the first time that Amy's done it. So, tell you what, I'm going to hang it out here because evidently this stuff's going to spray. So, let's see it.
Sam, you want to go first, or Mark, you want to go first?
You guys ready?
Absolutely. YouTube is ready.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
Coach.
Traditional Spanish cider, naturally still. Get a little effervescence, a little aeration on it. Just choach after choach after choach. Get choach face today.
Choach face. I love it. Love it. Love it. All right. So, if you want to have a unique cider experience, Black Twig is where it's at.